Imagine standing in complete darkness. It is the longest night of the year. The air bites at your skin. Around you, thousands of tons of stone press inward from every direction. And then, at exactly the right moment, a blade of golden light cuts through the darkness and illuminates a chamber that has been sealed for 5,000 years. The architects who built this chamber did not have computers. They did not have theodolites or laser levels or GPS coordinates, and yet they calculated the precise angle of the winter solstice sunrise with an accuracy that modern surveyors have confirmed to the fraction of a degree. This is not a story about primitive people stumbling through the dark. This is a story about minds, brilliant, organized, obsessive minds that looked at the sky and decided to build monuments to last forever. Over the next 3 hours, we are going to visit 18 sites on 6 continents. We are going to ask the questions that mainstream textbooks tend to skip. And I promise you this, by the time we reach the end of this journey, you will never look at ancient history the same way again. Because the most unsettling discovery is not any single monument. It is the pattern. Before we go anywhere else, I need you to hold one question in your mind. We will come back to it at the very end of this chapter, and the answer is going to change everything you think you know about what these people were actually doing. The question is this: why would a civilization spend 100 years building a monument for a single event that lasts 4 minutes? Keep that question close. Let's begin. The island of Orkney sits at the very top of Scotland, battered by North Atlantic winds that have been sculpting this landscape since long before anyone thought to record history. And here, rising from the earth as quietly as a sleeping animal, is Maisho. From a distance, it is nothing. A hill, a lump of grass-covered earth perhaps 15 meters across and 7 meters high. But walk toward it, crouch down, and follow the entrance passage inward. The passage is nearly 10 meters long and just wide enough for one person. The stones that form its walls are massive, single slabs, some weighing 3 tons, fitted together with a precision that still baffles structural engineers today. Not a millimeter of mortar, not a trace of modern tools, just stone against stone, held in place by geometry and gravity for approximately 4,800 years. You are now standing in the heart of Maisho, and the first thing that strikes every archaeologist who has ever entered this chamber is not the scale, not the stonework, not even the Viking graffiti scratched into the walls by Norse raiders who broke in around 1150 AD. The first thing that strikes them is the silence. Sound from the outside world does not reach this chamber. The stone absorbs it. The passage filters it. You exist here in a bubble of geological time, suspended between the world of the living and something older than language. Now, back to our question. Here is what this chamber was built to do, and it does it with mechanical precision every single December. On the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, the setting sun aligns perfectly with the entrance passage of Maisho. For approximately 4 minutes, no more, no fewer, a beam of direct sunlight travels the full length of the passage and strikes the back wall of the central chamber. Not the floor, not a side wall, the back wall, the exact geometric center of the structure. The builders of Maisho, working around 2800 BC, calculated the angle of the setting winter sun with an accuracy that modern laser surveys have confirmed to within a fraction of a degree. They then oriented their entire construction, thousands of tons of quarried sandstone, to capture that single annual event. Now, archaeology's official position is clear. Meisho was a burial chamber, and it was, skeletal remains were found here, but only partial remains, scattered, and critically, only from one individual, one person. You do not build this, a century of coordinated labor, the quarrying and transport of stones weighing multiple tons, the precise astronomical engineering. You do not build all of this for one person's grave, unless that one person, or that one moment, carried a significance we have not yet fully grasped. The Viking raiders who broke in during the 12th century left behind more than 30 runic inscriptions on the walls. One of them translates as, "This mound was built before Lothbrok's sons were born." Even the Vikings, standing inside Meisho 800 years ago, found themselves confronted by something so ancient it felt mythological. Who deserved a monument pointed at the dying sun? And why would the most carefully engineered structure in Neolithic Europe be used for a single burial, and then, apparently, never opened again? The stones hold the answer. We just haven't learned to read them yet. 1,200 kilometers southeast of Orkney, in the mountains of what is now North Macedonia, there is a place that NASA has listed as one of the 4th oldest astronomical observatories ever discovered on Earth. Most people have never heard of it. Kokino sits on a volcanic rocky outcrop nearly 1,000 meters above sea level. It was discovered in 2001, and when the first archaeologists began mapping the site, they realized almost immediately that they were not looking at a random scattering of stones. The site covers roughly 5,000 square meters. At its center is a large platform flanked by stone markers positioned with extraordinary deliberateness along the eastern horizon. These markers align with the rising points of the sun at the summer solstice, the winter solstice, and the spring and autumn equinoxes. But that is not what makes Kokino remarkable. What makes Kokino remarkable is the moon. The builders of Kokino did not just track the sun. They tracked the lunar standstill cycle, the 18.6-year cycle during which the moon reaches its maximum and minimum rising positions on the horizon. Predicting this cycle requires continuous astronomical observation across multiple generations. You have to watch the sky for 2 decades, record what you see, pass that knowledge to the next generation, and watch for 2 more decades. And then you have to build permanent stone markers precise enough to confirm your predictions. Carbon dating places Kokino at approximately 1800 BC, the Bronze Age. The culture that built it has left no other written record. No palace, no tomb complex comparable to Egypt, no empire stretching across the ancient world. Just this, a rocky plateau, stone markers, and 18+ years of patient skywatching encoded in rock. Some researchers have drawn direct comparisons between Kokino and Stonehenge in terms of astronomical sophistication. But here is the difference that most documentaries do not mention. Stonehenge required the transportation of stones weighing up to 40 tons from sources over 200 miles away. Kokino used the natural rock of the plateau itself, cut and shaped in place. The builders of Kokino were not showing off their ability to move impossible weights. They were doing something quieter, something arguably more difficult. They were teaching. The stone markers at Kokino are positioned not merely to record astronomical events. They are positioned so that a person standing in a specific carved seat can watch the celestial event through a natural or cut stone window. The observation was participatory. The knowledge was meant to be experienced. Who were the people who came to Kokino? Were they priests? Were they farmers calculating the agricultural calendar? Were they astronomers in the truest sense of the word, individuals whose sole professional purpose was to watch the sky? We do not know. No written record survives. The culture that built Kokino appears and disappears from the archaeological record like a stone skipping across water, touching down, leaving a mark, and then vanishing into the depths. But the stones remain, patient, precise, aimed at a sky that has not changed. We now move west and north to the quiet hills of Somerset in southwestern England, where another Neolithic passage monument waits in a field that most tourists drive past without a second glance. Stony Littleton Long Barrow is not famous. It does not appear on most travel itineraries. It has no gift shop, no interpretive center, no parking lot filled with tour buses. But that is exactly why we are here. Stony Littleton was built around 3500 BC, roughly contemporary with the early phases of Stonehenge, though centuries before its famous trilithons were raised. The structure is a long chambered tomb, a central passage approximately 12 meters long, flanked by 3 pairs of side chambers, all carved from naturally occurring limestone slabs. But it is the engineering details that reward careful attention. The entrance stone of Stony Littleton features a large ammonite fossil, a naturally occurring spiral, preserved and displayed as though it was selected specifically for this position. Some archaeologists believe this was deliberate, that the builders chose this particular stone because of the spiral, because spirals held cosmological significance, symbols of the sun's journey, the cycle of seasons, the passage from life to death and back. Inside the chambers, archaeologists have recovered the remains of at least 20 individuals. But the manner of their deposition is profoundly strange. The bones were not laid out in careful anatomical order. They were scattered, mixed. In some cases, bones from different individuals were intermingled, a femur from one person, a skull from another, arranged together as though what mattered was not the integrity of the individual body, but something else entirely. What? Some researchers now believe that sites like Stony Littleton functioned as what they call excarnation platforms, places where the dead were first left exposed, their flesh stripped by time and elements, before selected bones were brought inside and redistributed. The tomb was not a final resting place, but a staging ground. A threshold. The living came here. They handled the bones of their ancestors. They arranged and rearranged them. They spoke to them. Perhaps they believed those bones retained something, a power, a memory, a connection to whatever lay beyond the tunnel's end. And then there is the alignment. Like Maishowe, like Kokino. Stony Littleton's main axis is oriented with deliberate precision toward a specific solar event. In this case, the rising sun at the winter solstice, which would have sent light down the main passage and into the innermost chambers. 3 sites, 3 different cultures, 3 different centuries, and the same obsessive commitment to pointing their most sacred spaces at the dying and returning sun. Now, back to our original question. Why would a civilization spend 100 years building a monument for a single event that lasts 4 minutes? I think the answer is this. Because to the people who built Maisho and Kokino and Stony Littleton, the return of the sun after the longest night was not a natural event to be noted and moved on from. It was a promise. The sun had gone as far as it was going to go. The darkness had reached its maximum, and now, confirmed by the light striking the exact stone the builders had placed, the world was turning back. Life would return. The dead would be honored. The cycle would continue. The monument was not just an observatory. It was a machine for reassurance, built in stone, aimed at eternity. But if the sky held their greatest devotion, what happened when these ancient builders turned their attention downward? What did they find, or try to create, beneath the earth? The answer is stranger than anything you might expect. What you just heard was a single voice recorded inside an underground chamber that was sealed for approximately 4,000 years before it was accidentally rediscovered in 1902. The question we are going to sit with for the next 40 minutes is this. Did the people who built this place know what they were doing to sound? And if they did, why? In 1902, workers digging the foundations for a new housing development in the city of Paola on the island of Malta broke through the floor of a cistern and fell into an underground room. That room connected to another, and another, and another. What they had stumbled into was the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, a subterranean complex of 33 interconnected chambers carved by hand from soft limestone over a period stretching from approximately 4000 BC to 2500 BC. Roughly 1,500 years of continuous underground construction at depths reaching 11 meters below street level, using tools made of bone, flint, and antler. The site is organized across 3 distinct levels. The uppermost level shows evidence of natural cave formation that was gradually expanded. The middle level, the heart of the complex, contains the most elaborate carving, including a chamber with a corbelled ceiling that mimics the above-ground megalithic temples of Malta with such precision that archaeologists believe the same builders were responsible for both. And the lowest level, the deepest, the one that no one is permitted to enter without special authorization. The lowest level was not for the general population. We know this because of what was found there and what was not found anywhere else. The Sleeping Lady, a terracotta figurine approximately 12 centimeters long, found in one of the deepest chambers. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. The folds of the figure's clothing, the carefully rendered flesh of her upper arm, the specific angle of her pose. She is not dead. She is not resting. She is in a state of intentional suspension, an induced trance perhaps, a ritual sleep. Some researchers have proposed that the hypogeum was a place of incubation, a site where selected individuals descended into the earth, lay down in the darkness, and waited for visions. The ancient Greeks practiced something similar, called enkoimesis, ritual sleep in sacred spaces, seeking prophetic dreams from the gods. Was the hypogeum of Halsaflieni the world's oldest known dream temple? But it is the acoustics that force the most difficult questions. The Oracle Room. A researcher stands inside and speaks in a normal conversational tone. His voice fills the room, and then the walls give it back, not as echo, as resonance. The sound does not bounce. It swells, it multiplies, It seems to come from the stone itself. Acoustic engineers from the University of Salford conducted formal measurements of the oracle room in the 1990s. They found that the chamber resonates most powerfully at a frequency of approximately 110 Hz, a low male voice, or a sustained bass drone. 110 Hz. Here is what that number means. Research in neuroacoustics, the study of how sound affects the brain, has established that sound at 110 Hz significantly increases activity in the emotional processing centers of the brain, while simultaneously reducing activity in the language centers. In plain terms, exposure to sustained 110 Hz sound makes you feel more and think less. It induces a state that many researchers describe as trance-adjacent. Was this engineered or accidental? The oracle room's dimensions, its width, height, and ceiling curvature, are not replicated anywhere else in the hypogem. The chamber is unique within the complex. The builders had to have noticed the effect. They had to have shaped the room to achieve it, or discovered the effect and chosen this particular space for purposes that depended on it. If you wanted to induce a religious experience, if you wanted the walls to speak, if you wanted the voice of a priest or a god to seem to emanate from the stone itself, you would build this room. The hypogem held the remains of approximately 7,000 individuals when it was discovered, a population that was interred there over roughly 1,500 years. They brought their dead here, to this place of resonating stone and ritual darkness, and they continued to do so across dozens of generations. What did they believe happened here? What did the sound of a voice in the oracle room tell them about the world beneath the world? The chamber has been sealed to researchers for decades due to preservation concerns. The moisture from human breath is damaging the ancient limestone. We may never hear what the priests of Halsafliani heard, and maybe that is exactly what the builders intended. 800 kilometers northwest of Malta, on the island of Sardinia, a different kind of underground world waits in the red earth. The necropolis of Angeluruju is not a single tomb. It is a city of the dead, 38 chambers cut from the soft sandstone, interconnected by narrow passages, some simple single rooms, others branching into multiple alcoves as complex as apartment buildings. It was built and used between approximately 3000 BC and 1500 BC. The Nuragic civilization, the same people who would later construct the mysterious stone towers that still dominate the Sardinian landscape, buried their dead here across 1500 years of continuous use. The false doors. This is the detail that keeps researchers awake at night. Across multiple chambers at Angeluruju, the builders carved the representation of a door into the solid rock wall. A door with no opening. A door that cannot be used. A door designed not for the living. In Egyptian funerary architecture, the false door was a standard element, a portal through which the spirit of the deceased could pass between the world of the dead and the world of the living, receiving offerings and remaining connected to family. The concept appears in burial contexts across the ancient Mediterranean and Middle East, but Sardinia was not Egypt. The Nuragic civilization developed largely in isolation. Their writing, if they had one, has not been deciphered. Their language is unknown. Their religious system survives only in the objects they left behind and the spaces they carved. Did they arrive at the false door independently? Or was there contact, trade, migration, shared belief? between the Nuragic people and the cultures of North Africa and the Near East. Sardinia's position in the Mediterranean is strategically central. The island sits at the intersection of Bronze Age trade routes, connecting copper from Cyprus, tin from the British Isles, amber from the Baltic, and grain from Egypt. Sardinia produced copper. Sardinia traded obsidian from its volcanic deposits as far north as France and as far east as the Adriatic. The Nuragic people were not isolated. They were cosmopolitan by the standards of their time. And yet, the false doors at Angeluruju are not Egyptian in style. They are Nuragic. The proportions, the carving technique, the placement within the chamber, all are distinctly local. These were not copies. These were convergences. Different peoples, separated by hundreds of miles, and fundamentally different languages, arriving independently at the same symbolic solution to the same fundamental problem. How do you keep the dead connected to the living? How do you leave a door open in solid rock? The painted walls of Angeluruju add another layer of complexity. Red ochre, a pigment made from iron oxide, was the dominant color of Nuragic funerary art, and the motifs it was used to paint are consistent and deliberate: spirals, bull horns, abstract geometric patterns that may represent the sun, the moon, or something we have no modern category for. The bull horns appear repeatedly. In many ancient Mediterranean cultures, the bull was associated with strength, fertility, and sacrifice. The most powerful animal a pastoral people would have encountered, worth more than almost anything else a person could own, and therefore the most meaningful thing a person could give up. Did the painted bulls at Angeluruju represent animals sacrificed at the tomb? Or did they represent something more abstract, the energy of life itself, offered to the dead as a kind of spiritual sustenance? We do not know. The Nuragic people left no Rosetta Stone, but the spirals feel familiar. We saw them at Maisho. We will see them again before this documentary is over. In stone after stone, on continents separated by oceans, the spiral returns, as though some knowledge travels not through trade or migration, but through something deeper, something shared. Remember the question we opened this chapter with. Why were ancient builders so obsessed with creating specific acoustic frequencies underground? We have one partial answer from Malta. 110 Hz induces altered brain states. But here at Angeluruju, there is something else. The chambers at the deepest level of the necropolis amplify sound in a way that is not fully explained by their dimensions. Researchers who have conducted informal acoustic tests report that a sustained low hum in the innermost chambers seems to vibrate in the walls themselves, as though the stone is participating. Perhaps the question should not be, did ancient people understand acoustics? Perhaps the question should be, did ancient people understand the body? Did they know, through millennia of experience and observation, that certain sounds in certain spaces do something specific to a grieving human being, a frightened human being, a human being standing at the boundary between life and death? Did they build their sacred spaces not as architectural achievements, but as instruments? Instruments played not with fingers, but with stone. We need to stop. We need to stop because something is about to happen in this documentary that happens at every major ancient site if you look closely enough. A moment when the explanation that should work, the simple, logical, culturally specific explanation, suddenly does not hold. This is Candi Suka, a 15th century Hindu temple on the slopes of Mount Lawu in central Java, Indonesia. It should not look like this. Javanese Hindu temple architecture has a well-documented and distinctive style, complex, ornate, multi-tiered, dominated by the distinctive curvilinear towers called Prasada, Angkor Wat, Prambanan, Borobudur. These are the templates, centuries of architectural tradition. Candi Suku ignores all of it. The main structure is a truncated pyramid with a 45-degree slope and a flat summit platform. The proportions, the step structure, the proportional relationship between base and height, they align more closely with the Mayan pyramids at Chichen Itza than with any Javanese precedent. No serious mainstream archaeologist claims direct contact between 15th century Java and pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. The distances are too great. The evidence of contact does not exist, which leaves us with one of two possibilities. Either the parallel is coincidental, two cultures independently, arriving at the same optimal pyramid design for similar ritual purposes in similar mountain environments. Or there is a shared template, not a shared trade route or a diplomatic mission. Something older, something that both cultures were drawing on independently, centuries apart, from a common source that we have not yet identified. The carvings at Candi Suku are equally disorienting. Unlike the classical Hindu iconography of most Javanese temples, gods in recognizable poses, epic battles from the Mahabharata and Ramayana, the reliefs at Candi Suku seem almost deliberately transgressive. Explicit fertility imagery, abstract symbols, a prominent relief showing a blacksmith at a forge, which some researchers have connected to esoteric Javanese traditions of iron as a spiritually charged material. Was Candi Suku a mainstream religious site, or was it something more private? A center for a specific tradition, an initiatory order, a mystery school, whose practices were not meant for general consumption. The mountain location suggests deliberate separation from the population centers below. You did not stumble upon Candi Suku. You had to intend to go there. What happened at the summit of this pyramid that required both physical isolation and a design that does not belong to its own culture? The stones are not telling, but they are asking. The greatest defensive fortifications of the ancient world were almost never destroyed by military force. They were abandoned, voluntarily, by the people who built them, often at the height of their power. Why would you abandon a fortress that had never fallen? Hold that question. The Kassite dynasty is the great forgotten empire of Mesopotamian history. They ruled Babylon for nearly 400 years, longer than the Roman Empire ruled Western Europe. Their civilization thrived in the very cradle of human urban development, in the river valleys between the Tigris and Euphrates, on land that had already hosted Sumer and Akkad and the first Babylon. And yet most people, when they think of ancient Mesopotamia, think of Sumer, of Babylon, of Assyria. The Kassites are a footnote, if they appear at all. Why? Partly because the Kassite language has never been fully deciphered. Unlike Sumerian and Akkadian, which are relatively well understood, Kassite remains linguistically isolated. No known relatives, no bilingual texts detailed enough to provide a comprehensive key. The Kassites wrote, they recorded, but much of what they wrote we cannot read. What we can see is what they built. The ziggurat of Dur Kurigalzu was constructed in the 14th century BC as the religious center of the Kassite capital city. The ziggurat itself, its core still standing today as a massive irregular mound of brick, was once faced with fired and glazed bricks in multiple colors, rising in distinct terraces with a temple to the god Enlil at its summit. What remains is structurally extraordinary. The interior of the ziggurat reveals a construction technique that engineers still struggle to fully explain. The entire structure was reinforced with twisted rope buried within the brick courses, an early tensile reinforcement system that functioned, in principle, similarly to the steel rebar used in modern reinforced concrete. 1400 years before Christ, Kassite engineers were using composite materials for large-scale construction. The outer walls of the complex that surrounded the ziggurat present a separate puzzle. They were not merely thick, they were redundantly thick. Multiple concentric walls, overlapping fields of observation from the towers. The defensive architecture of Dur Kurigalzu is, by the judgment of military historians who have studied it, sufficient to withstand any military technology available in the ancient Near East during the 2nd millennium BC. The city was, by the standards of its time, essentially impregnable. And yet, it was abandoned. Not conquered, not destroyed, not buried in ash like Pompeii. The Kassites simply stopped. The city was depopulated. The ziggurat was left to the erosion of the centuries. Around 1150 BC, the Kassite dynasty fell to an Elamite invasion, but Dur Kurigalzu had been in decline for decades before that. The abandonment of the city appears to predate the military defeat. A fortress no one could take was given up before it had to be. Why? Some historians point to climate. The 14th and 13th centuries BC saw dramatic climate disruptions across the eastern Mediterranean, a prolonged drought that destabilized Bronze Age civilizations from Greece to Egypt to Canaan. Trade networks collapsed. Agricultural systems failed. The great palace economies of the late Bronze Age experienced what historians have called the Bronze Age collapse, a catastrophic civilizational reset that erased or severely reduced nearly every major culture in the region. The Kassites may have been one more victim of a catastrophe that had nothing to do with military failure. But that raises a different question, a more haunting one. If the people of Dur Kurigalzu saw the collapse coming, if they watched the harvests fail and the trade routes close and the rain stop year after year, what did they do with their knowledge? Did they write it down? We cannot read what they left us, but they left it. They kept writing, right up until the end. At almost the same moment that Dur Kurigalzu was being built in Mesopotamia, another civilization was constructing another impossible fortress on the other side of the known world. La Bastida, southeastern Spain, approximately 1700 BC. The Archaeological culture is not a household name. But their achievement at La Bastida is, in the judgment of military archaeologists who have now studied it comprehensively, the most sophisticated defensive installation constructed anywhere in Europe during the 2nd millennium BC. The walls of La Bastida are not walls in the ordinary sense. They are precision-engineered defensive systems. Individual stone blocks weighing up to 3 tons, dressed and fitted with a consistency that implies not just skilled workers, but a formal architectural specification, a design document, essentially, created and followed across the entire construction. The bastions, the projecting towers that allow defenders to strike attackers from the side as they approach the walls, are positioned with a geometric precision that modern military engineers have confirmed represents the optimal spacing for their purpose. Too close together, and the coverage areas overlap wastefully. Too far apart, and blind spots emerge. La Bastida's bastion spacing hits the mathematical optimum in 1700 BC, with no computers, with no military engineering tradition in Western Europe that we know of. When the archaeologists who excavated La Bastida published their analysis, they included a comparison that caused significant debate. The fortification design at La Bastida is substantially more similar to late Bronze Age military architecture from the Eastern Mediterranean, specifically the Levant, than to any other known European site of the same period. What does that mean? It could mean that Archaeological engineers independently developed the same optimal solutions that Levantine engineers had developed. Convergent evolution applied to military architecture. It could mean that there was contact, trade, technology transfer, some mechanism by which knowledge of Eastern Mediterranean military engineering reached the Iberian Peninsula in the 17th century B.C. Or it could mean something more uncomfortable, that our current understanding of Bronze Age connectivity and cultural diffusion is substantially incomplete. Like Dur Kurigalzu, La Bastida was abandoned. Around 1550 BC, the Argaric culture collapsed with a speed that archaeology cannot fully account for. Their settlements were depopulated. Their burial practices, which had been remarkably consistent across their cultural territory, simply ceased. No conquest, no visible external cause, no natural disaster layer in the sediment. The Argaric people built an impregnable fortress, and then they were gone. Is this a pattern? Dur Kurigalzu, La Bastida, the strongest fortresses of their respective worlds, both abandoned before they fell. What were these people afraid of that walls could not stop? Halfway around the world and 400 years later, the same story plays out again with different actors and the same ending. The Quilmes people inhabited these foothills from approximately 900 AD. At their peak, around 1300 AD, their fortified city housed an estimated 2,000 to 3,000 people. One of the largest pre-Columbian urban settlements in what is now Argentina, the Quilmes built their city with the same strategic intelligence we saw at La Bastida 6,000 miles away and 2,000 years earlier. The hill provides natural defense on 3 sides. The walls exploit the topography, creating a layered defensive system in which an invading force that breached the outer wall would find itself in a killing ground between 2 additional lines of defense. The Quilmes were not professional soldiers. They were farmers, potters, pastoralists. They tended llamas and terraced the hillside for agriculture and produced the extraordinary painted ceramics that now sit in museums in Buenos Aires and Tucumán. But they understood defense at a level that suggests either extraordinary native ingenuity or knowledge received from a more militarily sophisticated culture. The ceramics also raise questions. The geometric patterns on Quilmes pottery, nested diamonds, step-fret designs, repeated angular motifs, appear in pottery traditions across the Andes and into Central America with a consistency that suggests either widespread cultural contact or a shared aesthetic tradition of far greater age and geographic reach than current archaeological models account for. The Spanish arrived in the Quilmes region in the late 16th century. What followed was a siege that lasted more than a century. Let that sink in. The Spanish colonial military, equipped with horses, firearms, and the tactical experience of having conquered the Aztec and Inca empires, besieged Quilmes for more than 100 years before they forced a surrender in 1665. The Quilmes never fell to assault. Their walls were never breached by force. In 1665, they surrendered on negotiated terms and were forcibly relocated to a settlement near Buenos Aires, where most of them died within a generation from disease and cultural dissolution. 100 years of resistance against the most militarily capable empire the Western world had produced since Rome, and yet gone. The question we began this chapter with: why do civilizations abandon fortresses that never fell? The Cussites, the Argaric, the Quilmes. In each case, the fortress was sufficient. The walls held. The engineering was masterful. What ended each civilization was not a failure of the stone. It was a failure of the world outside the stone. Climate, disease, the collapse of the systems, agricultural, economic, cultural, that gave the fortress its meaning. A fortress protects the living from other living things. It offers no protection against the sky, the soil, the invisible enemy that has no body to stop at a wall. What these builders understood about defense was complete. What they could not have anticipated was that their greatest threat would not need to climb a wall. We need to talk about something that engineers, structural engineers, not archaeologists, have been quietly struggling with for decades: the precision of ancient stonework, not the size of the stones, not the distance they were transported, the precision of the cuts. Because what we are about to look at should not be possible with the tools we know these civilizations had. At nearly 4,000 meters above sea level, at the edge of the world's highest navigable lake, a civilization built one of the most precisely engineered monuments on Earth. Tiwanaku. The name translates, roughly, as the stone in the center. For the Aymara people who consider it ancestral, it is the place where civilization began, the navel of the world. For mainstream archaeology, it is the capital of a pre-Columbian Andean civilization that reached its peak between approximately 500 AD and 1000 AD. For engineers who have studied the stonework, it is a problem. The Akapana Pyramid is the dominant structure of the Tiwanaku complex. It rises in 7 terraces, its summit originally supporting a sunken court and the remains of what appears to have been a substantial temple structure. The pyramid was not just monumental in scale, it was hydraulically engineered. The pyramid contains an internal drainage system. Water collected in the sunken court at the summit and was channeled through stone pipes running through the body of the structure, emerging at the base in a controlled, non-erosive flow. The system was designed to prevent water from pooling and destabilizing the core fill, while simultaneously creating, based on the acoustic analysis of researchers who have modeled the water flow, a sound effect. Water moving through the channels at normal rainfall rates would have produced a deep, resonant rushing sound audible within the pyramid structure. The pyramid as an instrument again. This time, a water instrument. The stone. The outer casing of the Akapana uses andesite, a volcanic stone of extraordinary hardness, rated 6 to 7 on the Mohs scale, comparable to modern industrial-grade abrasives. The quarry source for Tiwanaku's andesite is 10 kilometers from the site. The quarry source for the red sandstone used in other structures is across Lake Titicaca, 65 kilometers away, transported by water on reed boats. The largest single block documented at Tiwanaku weighs approximately 131 metric tons. 131 tons. The largest crane currently in standard archaeological field use can lift approximately 20 tons. The largest mobile cranes in the world, the massive Liebherr ELTEM 11200-9.1, can lift 1,200 tons, but they require a prepared road surface, a solid foundation, a large assembly crew, and months of setup. The people of Tiwanaku moved 131-ton blocks to a site 4 kilometers from the nearest navigable water and 3,800 meters above sea level. We have theories, ramps, levers, teams of hundreds of workers. These theories are possible. They may even be correct. But here is what the theories do not explain. The joins. Ramps and levers can move stone. They can position it with reasonable accuracy. They cannot produce the sub-millimeter precision that characterizes the best stonework at Tiwanaku. The individual blocks at Akapana were cut, dressed, and fitted with tolerances that modern stonemasons achieve using diamond-tipped precision cutting equipment. How do you dress a 131-ton block of andesite to sub-millimeter tolerances using bronze chisels and stone abrasives? The tools we know these people had are not sufficient for the finish quality we observe. Either we are wrong about the tools, or we are wrong about the process, or we are wrong about something more fundamental about who these people were and what they knew. They look, at first, like enormous flower pots abandoned by a gardener the size of a small office building. The Plain of Jars in Laos's Xiangkhouang province contains approximately 2,100 stone vessels scattered across a plateau roughly 1,000 square kilometers in extent. The jars range from roughly 1 meter to over 3 meters in height. Some weigh 20 tons. They were carved from sandstone, granite, limestone, and in some cases, conglomerate rock. And they were carved from single blocks. No joins, no assembly. Each jar is a single piece of stone, hollowed from the inside. The hollowing is meticulous. Wall thickness is remarkably consistent across jars of radically different sizes. The largest jars, 2.5 to 3 meters tall, weighing 15 to 20 tons, have interior walls that maintain an even thickness of approximately 10 centimeters from rim to base. To hollow a 20-ton block of stone to a consistent 10-centimeter wall thickness, you need not only extraordinary tools, but extraordinary measurement capability. You need to know, at every stage of the hollowing process, exactly where you are relative to the exterior surface. We do not know how this was done. The jars cluster in specific locations, not in the valleys, not on the rivers, on the highlands, on ridgelines, on elevated plateaus with wide views of the surrounding landscape. Why there? The burial theory, that the jars were funerary urns, is supported by the discovery of human remains in some jars and evidence of cremation in the surrounding soil. But if these were burial vessels, why were they placed in locations that required enormous effort to reach, far from the settlements that would presumably have produced the dead? And why are they so large? Cremated human remains occupy a volume of approximately 2 to 3 liters. The smallest of the Plain of Jars vessels holds approximately 40 liters. The largest holds several thousand liters. A jar that holds several thousand liters is not a funerary urn. It is a storage vessel. Storage of what? Local legend, passed down across generations and collected by French archaeologist Madeleine Colani in the 1930s, speaks of a great king named Kun Chung who ordered the jars made to ferment rice wine for his armies after a military victory. The jars held the wine of celebration. It is a legend, but legends have cores. The largest jars have lids, or rather, some of them have circular stone discs that appear to have functioned as lids, now lying displaced beside their jars. Stone lids, for stone jars, carved to fit. If you are storing something, you seal the container. If you are creating a funerary monument, you do not necessarily need a lid. The Plain of Jars was heavily bombed during the Vietnam War. Zhengguang Province was the most intensively bombed location in the most intensively bombed country in the history of aerial warfare. Unexploded ordnance still covers vast swaths of the plateau, making archaeological excavation extraordinarily dangerous and expensive. What has not yet been excavated may hold the answer. What may lie beneath the jars, in the soil that has never been disturbed by anything except a falling bomb, is unknown. The Plain of Jars keeps its secret not in stone, but in earth, and in the indiscriminate violence of a war that had nothing to do with it. Before we close this chapter, we need to sit with something that is not a sight, but a question. A question about questions. We have been to Bolivia, Laos, Spain, Iraq, Argentina. We have seen precision stonework that defies available tool technology. We have seen astronomical alignments that required multi-generational scientific observation. We have seen architectural forms that appear on opposite sides of the planet in cultures with no documented contact. Is this coincidence? Marcahuasi is a place where this question becomes unavoidable. The plateau, roughly 4 kilometers long and 4 kilometers wide at 4,000 meters above sea level, is covered with granite formations that appear, with varying degrees of certainty, to resemble human faces, animals, and abstract shapes. Some of these resemblances are clearly products of natural erosion interacting with human pattern recognition. Pareidolia, the brain's tendency to find faces in random shapes, but not all of them. Some of the formations at Marcahuasi, a small number, perhaps a dozen, show evidence of tooling. Not modern tooling, not recent graffiti, subtle, ancient modifications, a curve slightly too geometrical for wind erosion, a noseline slightly too defined for rain alone. The Marcahuasi Plateau appears to have been used, in what period and by whom we do not know, as a site where the natural forms of the rocks were slightly modified to emphasize existing figurative resemblances. Not to create figures from nothing, to reveal figures already present. This is a fundamentally different relationship between humans and stone than the one we see at, say, La Bastida or the Acapana. This is not mastery of stone. This is collaboration with stone. But here is the convergence problem. These are not the same civilizations. They are not in contact. They are separated by oceans and centuries. And yet the solutions, the pyramid shape, the underground resonance chamber, the solar alignment, the hydraulic engineering beneath a monumental structure, appear again and again. Convergent evolution is real. Optimal solutions to physical problems do tend to be discovered independently by multiple cultures. The arch, the wheel, the spear. But optimal solutions to physical problems have a finite number of possibilities. There are only so many ways to build a roof before it falls down. What we are looking at here is not just structural convergence. It is cosmological convergence, spiritual convergence, the same obsessions: sky, stone, death, water, sound, precision, appearing in the record of every ancient civilization that left a significant material trace. What does that tell us? Either it tells us that these obsessions are simply human, that every culture, everywhere, when it develops sufficient complexity, turns to the same fundamental questions about time and death and the stars, or it tells us something else, something that the next chapter is going to attempt to approach directly. The people who built what we are about to see did not just understand their environment, they were managing it at a scale and with a precision that was not attempted again in the same region until the 20th century. Dolavira was built here on purpose. That is the first thing you need to understand. The people who established this city, part of the Indus Valley Civilization, also called the Harappan Civilization, had choices. The Indus Valley Civilization extended across approximately 1 million square kilometers at its peak, making it by area the largest civilization in the ancient world. Its settlements spanned what is now Pakistan and northwestern India, and they had, in many cases, access to fertile floodplains, reliable water sources, and navigable rivers. And they chose to build one of their largest and most elaborately engineered cities on a salt-flat island in the middle of a seasonally flooded desert. Why? Because of the water. More precisely, because of the challenge of water. Dolavira receives approximately 170 millimeters of rainfall per year, almost all of it in a 3-month monsoon window. Outside the monsoon, the region is effectively a desert. Groundwater is saline and undrinkable. The nearest reliable freshwater source is 30 kilometers away. The Harappan engineers who designed Dolavira built the most sophisticated urban water management system the ancient world has yet produced. 16 reservoirs, carved from bedrock and reinforced with dressed stone, surrounding the city's core. The combined storage capacity of these reservoirs has been estimated at 250,000 cubic meters of water. The system was not improvised. It was designed. Every component, the catchment areas, the inlet channels, the reservoir dimensions, the outlet valves, reflects a unified engineering plan executed with remarkable precision and maintained in functioning condition for approximately 800 years. 800 years, the modern United States has been a nation for less than 250 years. The Hoover Dam has been in operation for less than 90. Dolavira's water system outlasted every current human infrastructure on Earth by a factor of 8. But the water is not the only remarkable feature of Dolavira. The city contains what appears to be the world's oldest known public signboard. Near the city's main entrance, archaeologists discovered a large wooden board, now vanished, but its mounting structure preserved, that once displayed 10 large characters in the Harappan script. Each character was made from gypsum white material, mounted on a dark stone background. The contrast would have made the sign visible from a significant distance. It was designed to be read by people approaching the city. The Harappan script has never been deciphered. We do not know what the sign said. But it existed. On a trading city's main gate, 4,500 years ago, someone decided that the city's message, whatever it was, needed to be written large enough to be read from a distance. That is a sign. In the fullest modern sense, Information publicly displayed, intended for mass consumption by a civilization whose writing we cannot read. Around 1500 BC, Dolavira was abandoned. The reservoirs were empty, not because the monsoon failed catastrophically, but because a gradual drying trend reduced rainfall over centuries until the city's water mathematics no longer worked. The system was designed for 170 millimeters of annual rainfall. When the rainfall dropped to 140 millimeters, the margin of error closed. When it dropped to 120, the reservoirs ran dry before the next monsoon could refill them. The Harappan engineers had built for their climate. When the climate changed, their precision became their vulnerability. They had solved the problem of their world. The problem was that their world changed. Visual. The Apurimac region of Peru, remote, mountainous, bone-dry outside the brief rainy season. A stone object in a cleared area beside a path. At first, it looks like a flat boulder. Then, the carved surface resolves into extraordinary detail. This is the Sehuite monolith. It is a single granite boulder approximately 4 meters long, 2 meters wide, and 1 meter high. Its upper surface is carved with an extraordinarily detailed three-dimensional topographic model. Rivers, channels, terraces, pools, animals, and geometric features arranged in a pattern that researchers are still, after decades of study, not completely sure how to interpret. The water channels carved into the surface of the monolith connect. They form a hydraulic network. Water poured at specific input points flows through the channels in a controlled pattern, over terraces, into pools, through constrictions that accelerate flow, across flat sections that slow it, and emerges at the base. This is not decoration. This is a model, a functional simulation of a water management system. Who uses a hydraulic scale model? Engineers who are designing a hydraulic system, who need to test the behavior of water under controlled conditions before committing to full-scale construction, who understand that water does not always behave as calculations predict, and that physical modeling reveals errors that mathematics misses. The Sehuite monolith appears to be, and this is as close to a consensus view as the evidence allows, a working design model for an Andean water management and agricultural terrace system, built by current best estimates around 1000 BC, potentially older. At the base of the monolith, surrounding the main carved surface, is an additional system of channels and carved geometric patterns that appear to represent a different, more abstract hydraulic design. Spirals, angular patterns, interconnected geometries that some researchers have associated with astronomical symbolism. The monolith was used for multiple purposes across what may have been centuries of continuous use. The ritual and the practical, the astronomical and the engineering, are encoded in the same object, as they are at every site we have visited today. The Temple of the Sun at Ingapurca is the most important Inca site in Ecuador. But as we noted at the beginning of this chapter, the famous temple is not the most interesting thing about Ingapirca. Ingapirca was not built by the Inca. It was built by the Cañari people, who had occupied these highlands for perhaps 1,000 years before the Inca Empire expanded northward in the 15th century. When the Inca arrived, they did what the Inca typically did with existing sacred sites. They incorporated them. They built over them, around them, and into them, creating a palimpsest of cultures in a single architectural complex. The lesser structures of Ingapirca, the Cañari buildings that predate the Inca construction, are where the more challenging questions live. The Cañari constructed in a style that is, in some respects, more technically demanding than the Inca work built on top of it. The Inca were justly famous for their precision stonework, the fitted polygonal blocks of Cusco that survive even major earthquakes because their flexibility absorbs seismic energy. But the Cañari buildings at Ingapirca display a different kind of precision, a consistency of proportion across multiple structures that suggests not just skilled builders, but a formal architectural canon, a set of rules, explicitly or implicitly understood, that governed the relationship between a building's height, width, door placement, and window position. The same ratio. Building after building. Encoded not in any document, the Cañari had no writing we have recovered, but in the buildings themselves. This is how knowledge survives without writing, not in text, in the proportions of stone. The Inca, when they arrived, recognized what the Cañari had built. They did not demolish it. They elevated it, physically, by positioning their most sacred structure at the highest point of the Cañari complex, and symbolically, by integrating the existing sacred landscape into their own cosmological system. This is not conquest erasing knowledge. This is succession preserving it. The astronomical alignments at Ingapirca are now well established. The elliptical temple of the sun is oriented to capture the light of the summer solstice sunrise, the most important day in the Inca calendar, the festival of Inti Raymi. But the Cañari structures below it are also aligned, differently, to different celestial events, potentially to a different, older calendar. Two calendrical systems, two cultures, one hilltop, both pointing at the sky. Let me tell you what I think we have been looking at. Not a conspiracy, not ancient astronauts, not a single lost civilization that somehow transmitted its knowledge to every corner of the earth before disappearing. What we have been looking at is something both simpler and more profound. We have been looking at the human response to the same set of conditions. Every civilization on this list faced the same fundamental conditions. They all existed under the same sky. They all needed water. They all buried their dead. They all looked up at the stars and noticed that the stars moved in patterns. And so they all, independently, in their own languages, in their own materials, with their own gods, arrived at similar solutions to similar problems. The solar-aligned burial monument is not a coincidence. It is the obvious, elegant response to the human need to locate death within the cycles of the natural world. The sun dies at the winter solstice and returns. The dead descend and, perhaps, return. You build the monument to capture the moment of the sun's return inside the chamber of the dead. Of course you do. What else would you do? The acoustic ritual space is not a coincidence. It is the obvious response to the need for collective altered states in religious ceremony. If you know, through generations of experience, that certain sounds in certain enclosed spaces affect the brain in profound ways, you engineer those spaces deliberately. The precision stonework is not a coincidence. It is the result of what happens when a skilled tradition is maintained across many generations, each generation refining the techniques of the previous. We have achieved our own extraordinary precision in stone and metal and concrete, not through supernatural assistance, but through the accumulation of knowledge across time. The stepped pyramid is not a coincidence. It is the most structurally stable form for a large constructed object on a planet with a gravitational field. Wide base, tapering to a point. Whether you are building in Java or Mexico or Bolivia or Egypt, gravity gives you the same answer. But here is where I want to leave you, with something that the simple version of this argument misses. The precision of these monuments, taken individually, is explainable. The knowledge required, spread across centuries, is achievable. The achievements are extraordinary, but not impossible for organized, intelligent human communities. What is harder to explain is the dedication. Maichoe took approximately a century to complete. The water system at Dolavira was maintained for 800 years. The Quilmes resisted the Spanish for over 100 years before surrendering, not because their walls failed, but because the world beyond the walls had become incompatible with their survival. These are not the achievements of primitive people fumbling in the dark. These are the achievements of people who believed, with complete conviction, across dozens of generations, that what they were doing was worth doing, worth the century of labor, worth the 800 years of maintenance, worth the 100 years of resistance. What did they believe so deeply that it made a lifetime of quarrying and hauling and fitting stone seem like a reasonable way to spend a human life? We know part of the answer. We can read it in the stones. They believed that time was a cycle, not a line. They believed that the dead did not disappear. They became something else, something accessible at the right moment, at the right angle of the winter sun. They believed that water was not merely a resource, but a living presence that moved between the human world and the divine. They believed that the stars were not distant decorations, but a clock, a calendar, a conversation. They believed that what they built would last, and they were right. 1,500 years of sunrises. I want to leave you with one final thought. The oldest structure we visited today, the Hippogem of Halsaflieni, was built approximately 6,000 years ago. The newest, Kondisuku, was completed in the 15th century AD. Between them, they span 4.5 millennia of human construction, 4,500 years of people looking at stone and asking, what can this become? And in those 4,500 years, scattered across every inhabited continent, separated by language and religion and geography and time, the answer was, somehow, consistently, something that points at the sky, sounds like the earth breathing, outlasts every living thing that builds it, and asks a question we have not yet fully learned to hear. The stones are still asking, are you listening?